Hi, my name is Camille. I'm a French knitter based in Paris, and today I'm really happy to share this tutorial with you. With the coming of autumn and cooler days, I want to show you how to knit a pair of thick and cozy socks to keep you warm during the fall and winter seasons. These are socks that you can wear for a relaxing day at home or on your forest walks. In this video, I will guide you step by step through the entire process of making your own pair of socks. So this is a pair of socks knitted in DK weight yarn, featuring a long leg that can be worn straight up, scrunched down the leg, or with a folded cuff like this one. I chose to use 2x2 ribbing pattern that runs along the entire leg and top of the foot, providing good elasticity and fitting your foot perfectly. The sole will be knitted in stockinette stitch, making it smoother under the foot with no texture. These socks are knitted from the cuff down. We'll start with the stretchy cast on, then knit the entire leg in 2x2 ribbing. Next, we'll work on the heel using short rows, which I think is the easiest and quickest method since it is knitted seamlessly with the sock. After that, we'll knit the foot, which will fit to your shoe size. And finally, we'll shape the toe with decreases. And there you have the sock you will end up with at the end. You will need US 2.5 or 3mm needles. Depending on your preferred method, you can use either double pointing needles or mini circular needles 23 or 25 cm in length, or longer cable needles for the magic loop technique. It's up to you to choose the method you prefer. Just keep in mind that if you use mini circular needles, like I will, you'll also need another needle with a cable that is long enough, as it will be more practical for the toe, so you'll need both. You will also need two different stitch markers, a yarn needle, a pair of scissors to cut the yarn, and finally sock yarn between 100 grams and 150 grams of yarn, preferably with a small percentage of nylon or polyamide to make them more durable. So this will depend on your preferences. Since we are knitting a DK weight sock, you can either use a yarn of this weight directly, which is about 200 meters for 100 grams, such as the Perfect from Sandnes garn or the Sockier DK from CoopKnits. These are two yarns that can be used alone since they are already the right thickness. Or another option is to use fingering weight sock yarn, which is about 400 meters for 100 grams, that may be easier to find in shops. And in this case, you would hold two strands together, which is what I will do. I will use this yarn, it's the Fabel from Drops, in the pearl grey color, and hold it double. So just take two strands together as if they were one. You can also choose to use two different colored fingering weight yarns, which will create kind of a nice mold effect. If you are knitting the socks for someone else and cannot try them as you go, you will also need a measuring tape or a sock ruler if you have one, but this is optional. All the informations are summarized in the written PDF pattern, which is free and can be found linked in the description below the video. I've created the pattern in 3 sizes corresponding to 3 different foot widths. To choose the size you need to knit, measure your foot at this point, like shown on the image above, and select the closest matching size in the pattern. And please note that your shoe size does not influence the size you need to make at this point. Concerning the gauge of your project, do not worry too much about it. I just recommend you to start knitting the cuff of your sock, and when you're maybe 3 cm far down, just try it and see if your foot goes through. Now that you have chosen your yarn and the size that suits you, let's get started on the knitting. So take your yarn, 1 strand of DK weight or 2 strands of fingering weight held double, and leave a good length. I leave a tail of about 60-70 cm. Depending on the size you have chosen, you will cast on 48, 52 or 56 stitches. For my part, I will be knitting size 2, which is the medium size, so I will cast on 52 stitches. We will use the German twisted cast on because it's very elastic, allowing for a stretchable edge. I take my yarn and form a loop, and then goes through it and it forms us a kind of knot. I slide it onto my needle and tighten it. This counts as our first stitch. Then I will cast on the other stitches, so I take my yarn like this, holding both the yarn from the ball and the tail, forming a kind of triangle. Then I rotate my thumb, I will pass under the first 2 strands, come back between them, pass over all my strands and return from the outside under the third one. At this point, I twist with my thumb and go back between the first 2 strands, and release and tighten the yarn. And this forms the second stitch. I will repeat this process until I have the required number of stitches. So don't hesitate to slow down the video to really follow the movement of my needles if this is your first time doing this cast on, as it can seem a little bit daunting at first, but it's really not that complicated. So now I have cast on all my stitches. So this is the leftover yarn after the cast on, which I can shorten a bit if it bothers me. Now we will join in the round. I will make sure that all my stitches are facing in the same directions and not twisted. Otherwise it will cause problems when we knit the sock, as it won't form a proper tube. So I ensure everything is facing the same way, place my marker here to indicate the beginning of the round, and I will knit in the round. So I'll ignore this bit of tail and use the yarn connected to the ball. Now I will set up the ribbing pattern that will repeat throughout the entire leg. For my size, I will have 2 knit stitches followed by 2 purl stitches. If you are making size 1 or 3, the pattern will be slightly offset to keep it centered on the top of the foot later. So you will knit 1, then purl 2, and then knit 1 again. And then we repeat this 4-stitch sequence, which corresponds to our size, all the way around until we get back to the marker of the beginning of the round. So I start. For my size, I do my 2 knit stitches followed by 2 purl stitches. The first one can be a bit tricky to knit if you have tightened a little bit too much your stitches on the cast on row, but it gets easier afterwards. So I'm almost at the end of my first round. I knit my last 2 stitches, which are both purl stitches if you are doing size 2, or 1 purl stitch followed by 1 knit stitch if you are doing size 1 or 3. Now I slip my beginning of the round marker, and now that I have my pattern established all around, I will repeat the same thing on the next row. I will continue repeating the same round until I reach the length that I want for the leg. In this case, I've knitted 20 cm for the leg, so we repeat this round until we reach this point. Once I have reached the length I wanted for the leg, I will move on to the heel. I will knit the first half of the stitches, following the knit and purl pattern we've established, and I will place a second marker here to indicate the middle of the round. So I place a second marker, different from the one indicated at the beginning of the round to help us keep track. And I will knit the rest of my stitches until I reach the beginning of the round. Now for the heel, I will no longer knit in the round but only back and forth on the second half of the sock. So I will turn my work, place my yarn at the front and knit in this direction, starting with a short row that is formed like this. With my yarn in front, I slip my stitch as if to purl, and then I pull the yarn from front to back to create this double stitch. Then I bring my yarn back to the front. So let me show you again. I slipped my stitch on the right needle and pull to form this somewhat odd double stitch here, and I place my yarn in the front again. So we just created our short row stitch. And now I will purl the rest of the stitch until I reach the middle marker. So that's what we will do for this first part of the heel. We will begin every row by a short row. Now that I am at the marker, I turn my work again and do a new short row. So I keep my yarn in front, slip the stitch as if to purl, and again I pull my yarn. When we are on the right side of the work, the double stitch is harder to see, but it's definitely there, I promise. So I pull my yarn from front to back, and this time I leave it at the back because I will knit the rest of the row. So I knit until I reach the double stitch that I formed in the previous row, which indicates where my short row is. I stop just before this double stitch, which looks a bit odd and I don't need it. I leave it there. And I turn my work again to do another short row. I make sure my yarn is at the front, slip the stitch, and stretch it to make appear these two strands. Then I purl the stitches until I reach the double stitch I form on the other side. Now I see I'm arriving at this stitch, which is the last stitch before the double stitch. I must not miss it because it can be a bit close to the double stitch, but we definitely need to knit or purl it depending on the row which we are on. And this stitch, which looks a bit unclear, it's the double stitch. So I don't need it and I turn my work again. I place the yarn at the front, slip the stitch and pull the yarn to the back to form the double stitch. I knit the rest of the stitches until I reach the double stitch on the other side. So I repeat these 2 rows until I have 11 stitches left between the 2 double stitches on each side. So you should normally end up with these 11 stitches after completing a wrong side row. So now I have my double stitches, the 11 single stitches in the middle, and again my double stitches. We can see them clearly here. And we have just completed the first half of the heel. Now we will do the second half, which is basically the same thing but in the opposite direction. This will form a rounded part for the heel. So for the second half, on the right side row, I will do another short row. I place my yarn at the front, slip the stitch as if to purl, and pull the yarn to the back. Then I knit the stitches until I reach the double stitch on the other side. When I get to this double stitch, this time I will knit as if it was a normal stitch. So I go in the middle of it under both strands and I knit it. I stop there and turn my work. So from now on we will no longer form any short row, we will simply slip the first stitch of each row. So with my yarn in front, I slip the first stitch and then I purl all the stitches until I reach the next double stitch. And I purl it as if it was a normal stitch. I turn my work. This time I keep my yarn at the back. I slip the first stitch and knit until I reach the double stitch on the other side. You can see small gaps appear, but it's normal. Now I'm at the double stitch and I knit it as if it was a normal stitch. I turn my work again and I repeat these 2 rows until I have knitted all my double stitches. And you can see here that it's starting to form a little rounded shapes here, and that's what will give us the heel at the end. So for the last row of the heel, you must be on the wrong side row. I see that my last double stitch is here. And there you go. All the stitches have been worked for the heel, and we end up with this kind of duckbill shape that forms the heel of our sock. Now we will resume knitting in a round. So we'll knit across all the stitches. So I resume where I left off. I knit all of these parts until I reach the beginning of the round marker. I slip the marker, and now I will knit the stitches on the top of the foot, following the ribbing pattern we've established earlier. What I like to do also to avoid the little hole that can be formed at the junction here between the bottom and the heel step of the foot is to pick up an extra stitch in the space in the middle here. So I insert my needle roughly there, knit it like this, and it gives me an extra stitch here that I will decrease in the next round. So I continue to knit the top of the foot in pattern. When I reach the second marker at the junction on the other side, I do the same thing and create an extra stitch in the space in the middle here. So I will insert my needle here, for example, and knit the stitch. And we will remember to decrease this stitch in the next round. So I slip my marker and knit my remaining stitches until I reach the beginning of the round. So now I'm back at the start of the round. So if, like me, you've picked up extra stitches in the previous round, we will now decrease them. For me, this one is the extra stitch, so I will knit it together with the next stitch. That way you will have only one stitch remaining instead of two. And I continue knitting the stitches as they appear. So knit the knit stitches and purl the purl stitches. When I have two stitches left before my middle marker, I will knit them together to reduce the stitch I added in the previous round. And I knit the remaining stitches up to the beginning of the round. Now I have all my stitches in place and the right number for the foot of my sock. I have the ribbing pattern on the top of the foot and the stockinette stitch on the bottom. I will continue to knit the stitches as they appear until I reach the length I want for the foot of my sock. So this means I take the total length of my foot from the heel to the tip of my toes minus 4 cm. You can either try the sock directly on your foot and stop when there are only 4 cm left before the tip of your toes. Or if you have a sock ruler, you can check the shoe size you're interested in and stop when your sock reaches 4 cm below that. Or another alternative is you can use the shoe size foot length conversion chart you can find at the end of the written pattern and subtract 4 cm from it. Now that I've knitted the length I want for the foot, I have transferred all my stitches onto a needle with a longer cable to do the magic loop. Because as we are now going to form the toe of the socks, the circumference we'll work on will decrease and it will become more complicated with minute circulars. So if you were already working on needles with the long cable, you don't need to change anything. And if you were working on double pointing needles, you can continue like that as well. So I have arranged my stitches evenly on each needle and I still have my beginning of the round and middle markers. So we have finished with the ribbing pattern. The toe of the socks will be knitted entirely in stockinette stitch. So for the first round, I will knit all around. For the second row, we will make decreases. So I will knit one stitch, then I will slip the two next stitches knitwise, and I will knit them together through the back loop. So this is what we call an SSK, so slip, slip, knit, which creates a decrease of one stitch. Then I knit all the stitches until I reach the last 3 stitches before the middle marker. I will knit these two together. And then I knit the last stitch. I slip my marker. And I will do the same thing on the second half. So I knit this stitch. Then do a slip, slip, knit. And knit until I reach the last 3 stitches before the beginning of the round. I knit these 2 stitches together. And then I knit the last one. So I will alternate these 2 rounds, one round with only knit stitches and then one round with decreases, until I have 24 stitches remaining in total on the needles, or 12 stitches on each needle if they are arranged like mine. And I'll meet you at this point. Okay, so I've completed my decreases. I now have 24 stitches total, and to finish I will do one last round of decreases, which will give us 2 consecutive decrease rounds at the end, creating a slight rounded shape. and in the end we will have 20 stitches total. Now the last step we need to do is the grafting to close our sock. So if you haven't already done so, place your stitches on 2 needles like this, 10 on each side. Take a small tapestry needle and cut a length of yarn that is usually at least 4 times this length. So grafting is done like this. The yarn should come from the back needle. I passed through the first stitch on the front needle as if to knit and let it fall off the needle. Then I passed through the next stitch as if to purl but leave it on the needle. Next I go to the back needle and I pass through the first stitch as if to purl and let it drop. And then I pass through the next stitch as if to knit and leave it on the needle. And I repeat this sequence of 4 stitches all the way along. When I reach the last 4 stitches, I repeat the same operation . And let the last 2 stitches drop. I will then weave my end into the sock by inserting it just below the 2 stitches I just dropped, and I pull. And there you go, the toe of your sock is formed and the sock is finished. Of course, they still need to weave in the ends to secure them. I don't have a precise method for doing this. For washing the socks, the first time I hand wash them in a water with a little bit of wool detergent that doesn't need rinsing, and then I let them dry flat or on a sock blocker. After that, I usually wash them in the washing machine on the wool program if they are regular socks made from wool and nylon. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and that it helps you knit a lovely pair of cozy socks. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments below this video or on Instagram. And don't hesitate to share your creations with me, especially on Instagram with the hashtag #SlowMorningDKSocks.